If anyone finds this, I'm most likely captured. They have been after me for a while now, and I honestly don't know when this will come to an end. My name is Ghared. I'm a historian. I have been studying the mythology and reality of this world for as long as I can remember, but I possess some knowledge that the society unfortunately have problems with me knowing. Anyhow, I will carry this journal with me until the day I perish. Do with it as you please, but make sure to study this book with an open mind. This is a collection of mythology, stories, and truth. I have tried my best to make sense of most of it, and I think that I can safely call this the chronology of us. In the beginning, there was nothing. No colors, no shapes, no edges, no room. Just silence. This silence was interrupted by two entities who appeared and created what we call Heaven's Gate. The first one is called Logos, the second one, Limnos. We know nothing more of these creatures' appearance or personality other than the following. In ancient mythology, Logos is described as tall, bald, white eyes and with a blue skin. He had 8 arms, all of which were delicate and well-shaped. Limnos is depicted as having tentacles for arms, red skin, a mane and 2 fiery red eyes. But these ancient mosaics depicting them are most likely overdramatic. In my opinion, they were both quite faceless. The day they appeared, they saw each other. Their initial reaction to seeing each other for the first time was met by fighting. They had no motive, no reasoning. They simply came, saw each other, and sought to destroy one another. The battle between them is known as the Breach at Heaven's Gate, and this battle is still ongoing to this day. As they started grappling each other in what is described as a brutal match, the clash between these two were so powerful that it formed a world, our world. Logos had a plan in order to destroy Limnos in the future, and so he created 7 generals that were to inhabit this world and return to the battlefield when the time came. These 7 generals were the gods of our world. They were called Aias, Ghared, Nimel, Riona, Venus, Biorat, and Feorak. They lacked strength, but inhabited a strong intellect which were superior to even Logos and Limnos. They had personality, an appearance, a way of communicating. They were life. Limnos decided to do this himself, so he created 3 generals who instead of having intellect had a massive, unbreakable strength. They were called Sagarad, Yamar, and Orgarang. These were placed in a smaller world next to ours, and would be called to aid Limnos when the time came. This is the only knowledge we possess regarding Logos and Limnos. The 7 generals of Logos, now called gods, inhabited our world. Aias were the wisest one of them. He were the god of studying, academics, wisdom, and intellect itself. Ghared were the god of tactics, battle techniques, strategy, and martial arts. Nimel, the third one, was the goddess of music, mosaics, paintings, sculptures, and all that can qualify as culture or art. Riona were the goddess of communication, diplomacy, languages, and all types of writings or scripts. Venus was a strange one. He was the all-father of magic, the god of spells, elixirs, toxins, medicine, and everything that belongs to the school of magic. Biorat was the god of agriculture, farms, food, and a lot of nature itself. Feorak, the last one, were the goddess of love, fertility, sexual relations, beauty, and marriage. These 7 gods would be the first inhabitants of our continents. They eventually started practicing, studying, doing what they were made to do, to one day be called back to Heaven's Gate by Logos. They trained and they waited. a long time. As they were trapped here for centuries, they formed close relations to each other and eventually started to procreate. Aias and Nimel had a son called Uren. Gerhem and Feorak gave birth to a boy, Feohim, and a daughter, Kimos. Biorat and Riona gave birth to twins, a boy named Euthelus and a girl named Merian. Venus remained childless. Uren, Feohim, Kimos, Euthelus, and Merian were now born, and at this point the world had 12 gods, but the family lines kept extending. Urian became the god of politics, stewardship, economy, and systems. Feohim became the god of animals, livestock, flesh, slaughter, and hunting. Kimos turned into a rather special goddess. She was in charge of the wind, the skies, the stars, the trees, and the rhythm and harmony of the world. Euthelus was known as the worst of them. Don't get me wrong, he was no bad god. I'd say he were, in fact, the opposite, a good, empathic, and caring god. However, his job was to be the god over blood, pain, torment, and death. The horror of being in charge of all the evil actions in this world made him depressed. He eventually attempted to commit suicide by stabbing himself in the eye with an arrow. However, gods can only die by age, so this turned out unsuccessful. After this event, he was known as the Dead God. Merian, the last one, were destined to become the goddess of the sea, the creatures of the sea, and the waves. The gods lived in harmony together as a family. They could not hurt each other, as they were designed to work for the same cause, so the gods could only die of age. Fortunately, they had the blessing of aging slowly. It is hard to be precise, but I have estimated that a human century equals a year to the gods. In other words, waiting for a god to die would take about 10,000 years. As the children got older, they became adult gods themselves. As their parents, they too reproduced with each other. Uren and Merian had two identical twin daughters. They were called Eurita and Rheaga. They became the goddesses of friendship and brotherhood. Euthelus, the dead god, and Kimos, the goddess of harmony, had difficulties creating a child, and the few times they succeeded in having one, the child were stillborn. Until one day 20 years after the birth of Eurita and Rheaga, they had one child who lived. This child were both ungodlike and powerless. He was called human. He did not have these same abilities as his ancestors. He were weak, but he still had the intelligence that the gods inhabited. He could feel both cold and warmth, and were hungry and thirsty every day. For this very reason he was considered disfigured, a mistake. He started harvesting what the gods created. He killed animals so that he could eat. He cut down trees so that he could make a fire. And he drank the water from the oceans that the gods had created. They did not care for him. Not because they hated him, but because he was not capable of fighting for Lagos if they someday got called back to Heaven's Gate. Because of this, human cared less and less about the gods too, and went on a rampage where he seduced Eurita and Rheaga and they became his lovers. Time seemed to move much quicker for a human, and Eurita and Rheaga gave him multiple children a year. We are the offspring of human, the powerless god. As stated previously, Limnos created 3 generals himself. These 3 were unisex, and because Limnos blessed them with improved strength at the cost of intellect, they were fertile and reproduced at a fast pace. These generals were not equal to gods. They are described as misfigured generals with abnormal appearance unlike any other creature. They were created in something called the Broken Realm, a trance-like world where time almost seemed non-existing. As they frequently reproduced, their numbers grew. and from here on out the Broken Realm became the home to an entire army of hideous, misshaped creatures. These creatures are now known as beasts. Ghared, Yamar, and Orgarang's lack of intelligence started slowly becoming a problem. They became more and more separate from their task as time went by, and after being in the Broken Realm for 4,000 years, the beasts had forgotten about Limna's existence. At this point, the beasts had reproduced enough to create an army of 2,000 beasts. This was a powerful force that threatened the existence of the gods. One day, the gods discussed what to do now that they lived among the humans. Aias, the wisest of them, had an idea. He asked Venus if he could use his magic to create a gateway to another realm. That way, they could send humanity on a holy pilgrimage to a world beyond, where they could live and prosper in peace. Venus tried this, but they did not know what to expect. With a lot of focus, energy, and years of training in the arts of magic, Venus forced some kind of gate to open, and when he stared into it, he was devastated. He saw abominations, more horrid than you can imagine. They were many and they were strong. He could feel it. Every one of them turned their eyes to the gateway and ran straight at him. But he shut the gate down immediately before they managed to reach him. When he told Aias about his discovery, Aias got quite worried. For the first time, the gods understood that they were not alone, and that something out there could be a great threat to them. They had to mobilize. Aias made all the humans seek refuge if something were to enter their world. Venus taught some of the gods the arts of magic, while the others, the ones who excelled in martial arts, chose to forge weapons rather than use spells. And so the gods were prepared for anyone or anything. They wished to have the upper hand, and because of their intellect they would certainly have an advantage if something were to invade their world. There was one god, however, who disagreed. Euthyllus, the dead god, was excited by the thought of having potential enemies. Now he could finally find someone who could end his sorrow, his suffering, his existence. And this legitimate wish of dying eventually became his, and most of the gods' demise. He tracked down the gateway to the Broken Realm that Venus had previously created. As he approached it, he used the magic learned by Venus to attempt to unseal it. It costed him a great amount of time, 3 human years to be specific, but after a large amount of thinking and improvising, he finally managed to create a small gap in the gate. Through the gate, he saw what looked like 2 red eyes staring directly at him. He told the creature, "Are you the one who would spare me the burden of living this life?" The creature answered, "I may be, but the cost of your life must be repaid with a birth." They opened the gateway together and made love for 5 human years straight. Finally, the creature gave birth to a child. It looked like Euthyllus himself, but there was clearly something different with this child. "Take it with you and raise him as the god you intended to be," the creature said, and pushed his chest. "When this is done, the hole I made in your heart will open and you will fall." Euthyllus went back through the portal and sealed the gate. He did not know what he had done, but if it meant it would cost him his life, he would do it. He took the child with him to Aias and placed it in front of him. "To you I grant a new one, an offspring, and with that I fare," Euthyllus said, and the hole in his chest opened up as he quickly dissolved into ashes. The creature that Euthyllus encountered had now planted a child in the god's realm, and this child would grow up amongst them. The child evolved and became an astonishing god. He became the god of burning flames, fire, chaos, destruction, and rivalry. His name was Mogek. The gods continued to train and mobilize as time went by, but a very crucial event in history occurred. Aias had spent most of the time thinking, philosophing, and planning ahead. He was the most insightful of the gods and often used his time to think about the mysteries of the world. But he was also the oldest of the gods and had grown fairly weak at this point. Witnessing Euthyllus' death and understanding that there are other creatures in this world that might be hostile towards them made him realize that there are more to this world than the gods originally thought. This sparked an enormous interest in Aias' mind, and he felt like this needed to be investigated deeper. He had to take action and think outside the box. Together with Venus, the god of magic, and Chimos, the goddess of harmony, he created a material that would soon belong to the humans. This material was some kind of ore, called Ashimir. The humans only received a small dose, but they were told that this material were the only thing that could kill a god if the gods ever turned on them. The three of them, in fear of being called traitors, kept this private and did not inform the rest of the gods about this material. The only ones who possessed it were Aias, Venus, Chimos, and the human race. One day Morgic was called upon. He did not know from where or how, but he knew that he was needed somewhere else, somewhere far, far away. The calling led him to the gateway between the two worlds, and as his father, he opened it in the long time span of 3 human years. When it was opened, he felt like he belonged. He was met by a creature, the creature that birthed him, and behind it, a gigantic army. The creature told him, "My name is Yamar. I am your kin. You have now done your duty." And the army started entering the world of the gods. To summarize all of this, Morgic was doomed to be a traitor to the gods, even though they raised him as their own. He felt no regret, however. This was his call. The army of beasts had now breached the gateway to our world. The gods quickly realized that something was wrong, and then they noticed the army of beasts on the horizon. They gathered their weapons and marched onwards to meet them on the battlefield. The humans were kept out of this battle, so the gods stood alone against the army of beasts led by Ghared, Yamar, and Orgarang. The battle went well at first. Most of the beast army were destroyed by the gods and reduced to only 200 remaining beasts. Nimel, Birat, Feorak, Feohim, Merian, and Eureka fell in this fight, but the remaining 7 gods were still standing. The beasts momentarily retreated and Ghared, Yamar, and Orgarang stepped forth. Morgic was spectating the match from afar, unable to choose a side. But all of that turned quickly as he saw Ghared slaughtering Yamar. Even though Morgic was raised by the gods, Yamar was still his kin, his parent, and seeing Ghared slaughtering it ignited a flame of rage within him. Now he had decided the gods were his enemy. He rushed over to the battlefield and killed Ghared in a matter of seconds. He was in a rage that would last forever. Morgic was now more beast than a god. Ghared and Orgarang defeated Riona and Eureka, and the remaining gods were now Aias, Venus, Chimos, and Aias' son Euron. The battle was earth-breaking. The ground beneath them were torn apart. Even the wind had stopped blowing on the battlefield. It was brutal. But eventually, Venus, Chimos, Euron, Ghared, and Orgarang fell. There were only 2 entities still standing, Aias and Morgic. Aias used all his magic learned by Venus to put a spell on the beasts. The spell turned the beasts into part of nature. One of them became a mountain, the others a hill, and so on. With all the beasts trapped inside the world of humans, Aias had used all his energy. He were powerless, defenseless, and weak. Morgic walked over to him and finished him off with one final blow. The gods were now dead. Morgic now aimed to destroy the humans, but was eventually defeated by the Ashimir-infused scroll of Yoshitaro. But that's a story for another time. This scroll sent Morgic back to the Broken Realm and trapped him inside it for 1,500 years. But now, a nomadic merchant from Agadori have breached the gateway to the Broken Realm yet again, and the beasts who's been trapped in nature will soon wake up and eject from the mountains and hills of this world. This is the information I am not allowed to possess. I need to move. The guards are coming. My first collection ends here.